I've been living in Melbourne for a couple of months.
Right.
Yes, some years ago when I was finishing my PhD, because I actually um, had 2 months of my PhD in Monash University
Mhm.
in Melbourne.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was living in St Kilda. You know the other place.
No, I don't. I don't.
Where are you from, actually? From
So I'm Indian originally,
Indian,
but
but
I
you
was born in Dubai and
in New
grew
Zealand.
up there.
But you are from New Zealand.
Well,
Right.
partly from all three
But you
places.
ever lived in New Zealand?
Yes, for the
Yes, right,
last 7 years or so.
right, okay,
Yes.
right,
Yeah. And Dubai for the first 14, 15 years
all
of my
right,
life.
all right, all
So it's
right.
been quite the
Oh,
change in
yes.
environments. Yeah.
Hmm.
Tell me a little bit about Melbourne. What was that experience
Melbourne,
like?
Melbourne
The
was
city.
very very nice experience, especially for me because my father used to. My father was migrant there in the 60s,
Mm.
and he lived there for 5 years. And when I was a kid, he always used to tell about stories about Australia, you know, and for us Australia was like you know, place of marvels. Of we have always this myth of Australia, and actually I went in St Kilda because he lived in St Kilda while he was there. Then it was a opportunity to spend some time of my PhD in Melbourne. I just say okay, I should go there. You know, it was a both meaning for my PhD and both a meaning for me, you know, because at that time my father was living, still living, and then when I went back from Melbourne, I showed him the places, and it was and I went to the bar where he used to work when he was there, and it was very very significant somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it must have been quite a lovely
Mm.
experience to show him
Yeah.
the return
Yeah.
to these
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
places
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I guess
Exactly.
show it to him through your lens.
Yeah. Exactly. Yes. Okay. It was
Yeah.
a way to verify his tales
Yeah.
somehow.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful story. Well, I was intending to start it in a much more like structured manner, but I think this
Right.
was this was the perfect beginning.
Yeah.
I think
Mm.
with that story we can
Yeah.
kick it right off.
Yeah. All right. And
Um,
by the way, this PhD was the, the 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 basement for my research, was a starting
yeah,
point for my research. I finished this PhD in 2020,
yeah,
and I was in Melbourne in 2018. And from many contents of that research was the starting point for everything was following up.
yeah. So was Melbourne structured in your mind? You went there for
Mm.
purposes of urbanism and you knew that this was something that you wanted to investigate, or did it come off from your experience within the city?
No, it was a part of my PhD. My PhD was already set up when I went there. And was I just went there to investigate a specific part connected with the modular construction
Yeah.
because Monash University has a specific know-how, develop a specific know-how about modular construction, especially from the structural point of view. It was something that I was interested in, and the specific item of the article that we wrote an article with a professor from Monash was just the structure implication of a modular building that could substitute modules over time. And of course, this has an implication in terms of structure. And we wrote an article about this. It was published by on a magazine
Mhm.
in Australia. It was very interesting experience.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Well, building on your studies and your interest in specialty in
yeah,
urbanism, one of the things that stood out to me was you mentioned that human beings are urban beings by genetic code.
yeah,
And I would love for you to unpack that
yeah,
for me
yeah.
and what that means because that sort of draws to much deeper, more so evolved intentions and
Mhm,
leanings.
mhm.
So human beings by genetic code, what does that mean?
Yes, urban beings by genetic code means that we actually built our relationships inside ourselves before than outside of ourselves in using bricks and stones and whatever. The starting point is that to be aware that the city, I mean the geometry of the city is just the materialization of our relational geometry that we have inside ourselves as we are uh, 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 human beings that we should be. We want to be in relation with others. We cannot be without the relations. We define ourselves with the relation with our with our family, with our friends, with our community, with our state, with religion, with money, whatever. Then the we have we built these relations inside ourselves before to build actually build outside in a city. The relation we have in the family in our family become the house. The relation we have with our neighbors become the district. The relation we have with the religion become a church. The relation we have with the leader of the city become the city hall, and so on. Then all these are just the materialization of a geometry that we have inside of ourselves. And we are, if you look at the structure, geometrical structure of our brain, is actually a network. Is actually a network, and could be uh, interpreted as a city, a urban fabric actually. And and this is how we connect each other, and this geometry become. That's why I'm saying that we are urban being, because the geometry of the city is just already inside ourselves.
Well, through your research, you draw out this observation that the more rationalist ways of
Mm,
conceiving how we organize ourselves in urban fabrics, the more rationalist ways of those in the past few hundred years sort of
mm,
conflict with the way this geometry is
yeah,
manifested
yeah,
within
yeah,
ourselves.
exactly.
Can you explain
Yeah,
that dissolution to me and how that comes
yeah.
about?
Oh, I said that the rationalism in urban is a madness. This is
Yes,
what I
yeah,
said.
yeah.
Uh, just because the idea that we can elaborate a pattern, completely abstract, not connected with our way to get in touch to each other, to relate to each other, and overlap this pattern on the real city, erasing the real city. This is a madness. The idea that the historical city is something, you know, mm, that you cannot understand, and the only way is to destroy the historical city and substitute the city with something that we define rational, but which is not rational because it's not matching with our DNA in terms of construct build our uh, environment, constructed environment. This is the reason why I said that rationalism is the worst deal that urbanism made in the last few centuries. Yeah,
Yeah. And you mentioned the real city and then the rational city.
yeah.
What defines a real city in your mind? What makes a
Mm.
city that's connected?
It's just make you a sample. If you if you are a doctor, that you have to, you care about a person who has an illness, and you first of all you have to study the body, how it works, how the geometrical structure inside, and and uh, the what rational is made with the urbanism is just like a doctor said. I don't understand this body. I want to. We destroy this body. We substitute with a body that I consider rational because I can understand. But if you don't understand something, it doesn't mean that this thing doesn't have any meaning. The point is to understand, how the historical city works. The historical city is just like an organism. It's just like a living body, and to understand how it works, it means that you have to listen and to understand. the connection between the built, the building, the built part and the relational part. And when these two things are, you can match these two things, uh, you can anticipate the evolution, but not the substitution. Then not substitute, but evolute the city is the different approach that I propose in the book for future urbanism.
So can you, when you talk about the relational components and building sort of those relations between not just the people themselves, but also the understanding of how people group themselves. You mentioned the argument of how family structures have
Yeah.
evolved throughout the years. Can you outline your understanding of that area for me and explain how these have evolved throughout time,
Yeah,
throughout the
you
different
mean the family structure?
yes, the
Yes.
family structures and then their impact
Yeah,
on
yeah, yeah. Okay, the family structure impact affects
yes,
the house
yeah,
basically, right? And in the book I mentioned the study of American sociologist Peter Laszlo,
mhm,
and his view of the evolution of the family was very interesting for me because he was studying the social microstructure of in United States society in the 60s, and he actually saw then that the microstructure of the society was evolving out from the nuclear family. Nuclear family means father, mother, and son, or daughter, whatever, uh, to something that was very similar to how the family was structured before the Industrial Revolution. I mean, the nuclear family is a result of the Industrial Revolution because it's the actual workforce, which is mother, father, and the future workers that are the son or the daughters. And before that, before the Industrial Revolution, it means before the 18th and 17th centuries, 19th or 18th centuries, the family was something was a what Peter Lazard called houseful, I mean a perimeter that includes not only parents and son and daughters, but also grandparents first of all, and also friends, and also people was helping, the family. And nowadays, we are coming back to a structure like this, to a larger, a wider perimeter that includes different, not only father, mother, and son and daughter, but also some other people. Then the house will change considering this evolution, because the apartment, also the name apartment is very interesting, means put apart, right? Uh, uh, but will what I propose is to make evolute the apartment in a house, a built houseful, means a perimeter that can be reconfigured according with the different configuration of the family, larger family, let's say. This means that the individuals uh, are very important, and the relation between individuals are very important. This relation can be not fixed, but can change, and then when the relations are changing, the house should be adaptive in a way that can be fit the new configuration of relations.
okay. Um, when it comes to this configuration of housing, and as you mentioned, like sort of the return back to larger groups and
Yeah,
larger ways of
yeah,
organizing society, it reminds me of that proverb, it takes a village to raise a child,
yeah,
not just a
yeah,
family.
yeah.
Connotations to I guess how we evolved, tribes of
Mm.
humans and versus sort of the more individualistic approach these days. But when it comes to understanding the trends in the way housing is going, and especially mass housing at an urban scale, what are some of the most important questions to you, the most important issues that need to be looked at that aren't really being addressed at the moment?
In a housing,
Yes,
right? Yes, I
housing.
think the most important feature that the house should implement in the future evolution of design will be the adaptive feature. the possibility for the house. We are used to see the house as something which is not changing, fixed, you know, and the most important shift that we should implement in our view in the approach is to conceive something that is moving inside itself. This can change. It will be something that rotate, shift, slide or whatever, but in a way that the apartment or the house will be something dynamic and not
You mean
static.
physically, like
Physically,
one house
physically,
module, for
physically,
example? Okay.
physically, or the house inside, instead of had the walls fixed or whatever, it should be something that is moving inside in order to dynamic. That's the word is dynamic, not static. The apartment for us is static, and every time we should make a change is something crazy, because you have to ask, call the people for with hammers and so on, and they make a lot of noise and powder whatever. But instead we should conceive as a machine with a mechanism, something like a mechanism inside that can be dynamic and not static anymore. This is the I don't I have a way. We are in our office, we are developing the adaptive housing in this way, but of course others can develop the same concept in another way, of course.
Okay. What are some of your breakthroughs at the moment with this concept? What are some of those challenges and
Mm.
ways you've addressed them?
No, the something that we are designing now, a building with some apartment can be extended or reduced
Yeah.
and reconfigured with a mechanism inside that allow the people to enter in different way, or separate different part of the apartment in order to 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 adapt the size and the configuration of the apartment with the normal change that the family has. The family starts normally two people, then become three, four, because some you know uh, new human being, new urban beings arriving, and then after a while, these urban beings go away because they become, like you went away from your house, like I went away from my house, not. And then first you need a small space, because normally you don't have very much money at the beginning. Then you need to increase your space, then you need to decrease your space, and maybe next you need to increase because you need to host maybe someone that help you to live because you get old. But this is a normal evolution of the family. What happened till today is that the people, when they need the new space, they should change house. Then so far, until today, the people are following the houses. We should,
What do you mean by that?
yes,
People are
because
following houses.
the family follow different houses. It's not the houses follow the people, but it's the people following the house. I mean, the people need different houses according with the change of needs, right?
Right. So the housing stock that exists, the people are being
Exactly.
forced to
Exact.
adapt
First,
to.
to
Okay.
yeah, the people adapt to the house.
Yeah.
Then we should see the thing upside down and say that as the house that should adapt to the people, right? Then I can stay in my house. For instance, you consider a senior couple that the children went away, and then they feel lonely in a big house. Then normally what they do, they change house. But they changing house when you get old is something is something psychologically demanding, because you lose your story, you need your places. Consider what happen if you can stay in your house, but you can reduce your space and use the rest of the space for other uses, right? Then is a fundamental change in designing a house. Not the people following different, moving to adapt to different houses, but the other way around. The house which is changing itself in order to follow the change of needs of the people.
Okay. How would you apply this line of questioning to the city of Milan, for example,
Mhm.
just for a real life understanding? What's your opinion on the way the housing stock in Milan behaves at the moment and the ways it could or should transform
Mhm.
in the future?
Who says that from the structure of the city is already well structured. I mean, we have a center, a city center, of course, but we have a lot of, uh, mm, let's say, district which have their own identity, right? Then uh, the city of Milan is a kind of cluster of small cities inside because the structure of Milan was a historical city of Milan, and then uh, out of the walls of Milan, there was a lot of little towns, right? When the city enlarged, include these towns, and that this town still has their own identity in the urban fabric. Then, from this point of view, Milan is already well structured in terms of general urban fabric. For the housing stock now, there's nothing special. We had a lot of we had the last decade a huge increase of constructions, but this an increase of prices, by the way. Uh, but this was not an increasing of innovation in terms of typology, in terms of technology. We implement a lot of sustainability in terms of not wasting energy, basically, and not in terms of CO2 emission and so on. But from the point of view of the typology, I mean, the point of view of how really the people, the conceiving of the apartment is the same technology of almost 70 or 80 years ago. Nothing new. I mean, we still have a living room that the maximum of the evolution is to have a living room with the kitchen inside the living room. That's the maximum. Then normally the layout of the apartment is basically the same. You know, then and this is the point where I think we need to innovate. We architects need to propose something new because the everyday the quality of everyday life of the people is affected mostly almost 100% from how the house is structured. And when in this case, when like in this last years in Milan, there is a huge increasing of price. The real estate companies uh, sell everything. Then it doesn't matter how it is, you just sell. Just square meters. Then we need to innovate the typology of the house.
Okay. And this is something that you've investigated with your PhD as well to
Yeah,
do with the structural side at
yeah,
Monash, as you mentioned.
yeah.
What are some of the bigger struggles that have to be overcome or maybe have been overcome that could sort of unlock this typology
Mm.
as a viable option?
Yes, the 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 biggest obstacle, to implement innovation is the build as usual. Normally the real estate company and they used to build in a certain way. They are safe if they do always the same thing. They don't want to change anything. They just want to sell. They want to be sure. They don't want to dare to innovate or to try something new, right?
What works works. If it's selling,
Yes, yes.
don't
What it
fix
was in
it.
the past, why shouldn't work in the future, and so on. Then the only way was to create our own real estate company. That was the only way to try to innovate. It was hard. Even then, it was hard because we did first building. We create a small real estate company, and we start with the first building, and we face a lot of problems. We just forget about the innovation. We had to survive somehow. But despite all this, we actually succeed in design and build and sell an adaptive apartment. And this for us is a real good, it's a great success. And now we are designing a second building where we are much more focused on, because we already passed the challenges in the first building, and in this second building there are many more adaptive apartments, and we are much more focused on innovation. But it's not easy because it's not only the real estate company, but also investors, and also the construction company, and also the system connected. which is very hard to innovate. It's very hard to innovate.
Yeah. Well, as you mentioned, innovation doesn't just come around. It's not the natural state of things. You
Exactly,
kind of
exactly,
has to be
exactly,
forced
exactly,
into
exactly,
motion.
exactly,
And this sounds like very much like any other technological startup that has to
exactly.
come around. You
Yeah,
have to be convincing and find someone who's willing to take the
exactly.
risk. And it,
Yes.
gosh, I can only imagine
You risk
how.
your own money, by the way. Yes,
Yeah,
that's the point.
yeah,
Mm.
and especially to do that with like so many people involved and people's
Yeah,
dependence.
exactly,
I can only
exactly.
imagine it would have been quite an
But
intense.
I can tell you something that
Yeah.
from the we actually, of course, designing this technology, which includes modular components that can be extracted and substituted. Like the apartment has a technological core that is built off-site and is prefabricated, and they can be inserted and then extracted and substituted over time. And we call this techno module, right? And what is nice, because we won tender from European Community to European Union to build a prototype of this techno module, and we actually built the techno module. We also present the techno module to the press, and the all the technicians involved, they were very much involved with this idea, with this innovation, and they start using the same words that I invented for the PhD research, and they now use these words like normal tools, in design, and this is a great success, because the first uh, step to innovate is to change the language, to find the words that represent your innovation. This is the first thing, because when these words start to circulate, to be used not only by you, but also by a group of people working with you, means that the innovation is going on, is becoming real, right? And this is a great success, because in this new building we involve the same technicians, the same engineers, same
They
team.
already knew the
Yes,
words.
they already knew the words. Yes, they already knew the words. Yes, that's the point. In the first building, we didn't have the same this technician. Then all the people there, I mean, the engineers, structural engineer, plant engineer, so on, they didn't know the words. That's the point. That it was difficult to push in the right direction. But when you share the words, when you start changing the language, then you start actually making become true the innovation.
Help me understand what is in this technological core and then what's being able to be moved and added and substituted.
Yeah.
Can you paint that picture for me?
Okay, there is two aspects of the innovation. One is the typological aspect that we already mentioned, the reconfiguration and so on. And then there's a technological innovation, which is basically, I can, tell you about this in this way. Consider the apartment, all the technological equipment of the apartment are spread out all over the apartment, right? All around, in the walls, in the ceiling, in the floor, whatever.
So this would include like appliances, HVAC systems.
Exactly,
Okay,
exactly. The
electric.
kitchen, the
Yeah.
bathroom, and so on. What if we take all the technological equipment apartment and concentrate all them in a module, which is always the same? It doesn't matter if you are building one building or another, but you can conceive your apartment like an empty space with a slot to introduce this techno module, which gives all services and heating system or whatever to the empty space. That was the idea. And actually, in the PhD, I developed this idea, and with the finance of European Union, we actually built a prototype of this module. And in this building, we are designing 20 apartments, all of them with this techno module inserted. Uh, the perspective of this is to be able over time to extract this technomodel and substitute the technomodel. Technomodel includes kitchen, bathroom, all technical equipment, instead of refurbish the apartment with a lot of problems. Just in one day, you take out technomodel, you insert the new one, you have a new bathroom, a new kitchen, all new equipment. Then this is the idea.
Is it similar at all to the Japanese metabolist movement that happened
Okay,
in?
the metabolist movement, you mean the building which became very famous
Yes.
in, yes,
Yeah.
in that building, the module is the space.
Yeah.
The module is just a living cell, which is completely different, you know.
You've flipped it. You've gone the
Yeah,
other way.
exactly.
In
The other
that
way.
case, the permanent core is the
Exactly,
technology, right?
exactly. Technology
Right.
is the model that can be extracted, reinserted, and the spaces you can give the shape you want. This means you can. It's not all. It's not all the equipment in a building because you have, of course, the mother, what we call the mother structure. The mother structure has its own plants, of course. You know the main lines of the plants, and then you insert this technomodel that can be attached to the main lines of the plants. But if you consider the wall building, technomodel can represent 25% of the equipment in the entire building. And you can take this 25%, which is very valuable in terms of money because there's bathroom, kitchen, all equipment, apartments, and you can industrialize, not prefabricate, but industrialize. I mean, produce in large scale, right? It means that you can reduce, this is a perspective, of course, can reduce cost of production, but basically you can reduce a lot the cost of refurbishment, the renovation and the upgrade of technological upgrade of the building in this way. Okay, this is the view, right? And from the view to the reality, that we are struggling, but we are close to realize the first building using this technology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how does the adaptation of the surrounding spaces to the technology look
Mm.
like from a technical perspective? How do
Mm.
those spaces transform?
The techno model and standard adaptive apartment is about 100 square meter,
Yeah.
which means 3 bedrooms apartment, basically. And this size of apartment needs two techno models, right? These two techno models, they bordering all the spaces. Then they have a face looking into every space. Then in this way, they can, cover, the technological service to all the spaces. And of course, you have to have a small distribution also in the rest of the space, of course. But we say that 80% of the equipment of the house is concentrated in the technomodule, and the technomodule itself, technomodule can face all the space, the empty space of the apartments. This means that can serve, technologically speaking, all the apartments.
Are there any like planning restrictions that come about from this approach, or any other sort of restrictions that wouldn't be the case in a freely planned
Mm.
apartment?
The only link that you have somehow is that the bathroom should face the facade of the building. You cannot have a blind, totally blind bathroom, so of course. But we actually develop what is interesting is that of course the slot is always the same, but the techno model can change. Then you can have an apartment where you take out the housing techno models, you put some other kind of techno model, use the same slot and the same attached, the same standard for to connect, the same connection standard. You can change the function of the space. We were thinking about like medical techno models can provide some services for for
As you
medical
age.
assistance, right?
Yeah.
For yes, and also because the techno model is already not only one of the technology included in techno model is also the connection to the network. Then is a, is a plug and play, we should say, right? You insert is already connected. Then you can also extract some data from the techno model concerning how the techno model is being used. We worked with the Siemens, and we invent another words, which is the behavioral sensors, right? Sensor to who detect the not the energy consumption, so but the behaviors, right? Behavioral sensors. And this is a new word. And Siemens was very happy with this new word. Then this is a very interesting aspect of Technomodel. In terms also of connection for medical assistance, for instance, and you can detect from far, the biometrics of a person that is maybe needs some dialysis or whatever, or heart problems and so on. And but also other function like we design using the same slot and the same standard of connection. You can also design a technomodule that has a blind uh, bathroom, and use the rest of the space giving to the empty to have that. Then also blind bathroom can be designed using the same slot. The slot is just the size of the hole that you have in the facade to insert the technomodule, and the connection standard to the main lines of the plans of the building. Even the length can be changed, even, right? Then is is a system. Then a system opens a lot of possibilities.
Right, right. What's really what's really interesting to me is the sort of hurdles and loopholes that you would have had to jump through to get this new technology
Mm.
built, I guess, first at the European Commission
Yeah,
stage and then in an actual project and
yeah,
now through the evolution of projects.
yeah.
Can you paint that picture of what your thoughts were when you were planning? I'm going to guess planning the strategy
Mm,
to bring about this new
mm.
technology, or how did it evolve and come about?
This is not a strategy. Strategy
Yeah,
is just do it.
yeah.
Just
Give
let's
me give me
do
the
it. Let's
secrets.
do it.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's do it. And don't stop if you have an obstacle. But what I can say, there are a lot of obstacles, right? And but the point is despite all the obstacles, just to go ahead somehow. But what is interesting that when you keep going and you keep talking and you keep using the new words that you invented, this language opens new possibilities. For instance, the money received from European Union was was obtained by using words, because we had to write. And if you have the right words, then you can get some support. And every possibility. But the main shift was to not to persuade someone to invest, but to risk yourself, to risk your money with other people together, to believe in this innovation, and then risk yourself, risk your own, take your risk, basically. And also because I didn't want to if this works, why I should give the result to someone else, right? That's also a very very strong thought. you know if I believe in this, why I should give someone else the
Fruits of your labor.
yes, the revenues of this idea. If it doesn't work, will be I risk myself. I don't spoil any other. But if it works, why I shouldn't risk myself? And this is the only thing I can tell you.
Yeah. Well, it seems through reading the book and through watching some of your interviews that you have a deep sort of implicit understanding of sociology and
Mm,
psychology from
yeah.
an evolutionary lens. Was that uh, did you actively think about that when coming up with how you might plan stages of the project, or was
Mhm.
it more so of an understanding that came naturally?
There is a natural, the ability to understand this dynamics, but actually I studied sociology for the PhD, because in the PhD I didn't give you the book of the
The
PhD,
big
but
boy book.
yes, yes. But there's a section, different chapters talking only about sociology, and because that was the starting point. Why we build a house in a certain way. Why, for instance, our Western civilization built some kind of house, and maybe in China they built the house a different way. Not really nowadays, which is almost the same all over the world, but in the past, with the Roman domus, and the house of the ancient Chinese cities and study how why was done in a certain way and so on. It was very interesting to say this. By the way, this I also get honoris degree from in sociology. By the way, just because of this study. Yes.
Outstanding. Wow. That's really lovely.
Yeah.
That point on the way different cultures do
Mm.
things,
Yeah.
um, that reminded me of a question that I was very eager to ask you, which is this approach towards the trends in housing.
Mm.
Do they look, in your mind, do they look any different in developing economies and countries that are
Mhm.
struggling to put a roof over the heads of,
Yeah.
I guess a much more significant amount of
Yeah.
people? What is your understanding of that way
Yeah.
versus?
Actually, I didn't study specifically this aspect, and I cannot tell you anything, in a very specific way. But what I can understand is that first of all, we should be aware that there are almost one billion people that they don't have any roof on their head. That's the point. That when we talk about smart cities, we should consider we cannot talk about smart city until when we solve this problem. And have a roof on your head is a I think is a fundamental right for human beings, right? And this the problem is solvable. That's the point. It's solvable. The problem is solvable. I should tell you something about how many billions we spend for a war. With the same money, we could give a roof on the head all the people that nowadays they don't have one. Just consider this, right? And then the problem is solvable. And when I participate or I hear about conference about the smart cities, held maybe in New York or whatever, I say, well, you talk about smart city, but consider that the smarter cities. First of all, the first step for smart is to have a roof on your head, right? Then what was asking me? I don't remember.
No, just your
Uh,
understanding of the way
uh,
housing trends
yeah.
develop and how people relate to each other in more developed versus developing economies. And
Mm.
I think what you said makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I think even just unlocking that human
Mm.
potential and stopping the
Yeah.
suffering is
Yeah.
a boon to not
Exactly.
just those people, but everybody else. I
Yeah.
mean, from where I'm from, 1.5 billion people in my country, and a very, very significant amount of them are unfortunately in not so great positions. And just thinking about the amount of, for example, the potential in the kids, if they were brought up in an environment that was
Hmm.
more um, that more enabled them to pursue their dreams and their goals and contribute to
Yeah.
society in a much more effective
Yeah.
manner. That would be such a blessing to
Yeah.
everybody. I'm
And
really
also
fortunate.
is the best way to create wealth.
Yeah,
It's the best way to create wealth.
yeah,
And the money we use for war can be used to build cities instead of destroy cities, right? That's the and build city means to give the space for education because city is the place for education. Without city, we don't have education. We cannot educate in the jungle or in the forest, right?
yeah,
When you have a space, artificial space, in a city for a house and a space for education, then you can have education, you can transfer and increase and improve the knowledge.
yeah.
Then city education are the two key factors for to create wealth because that is the only that is the only way.
Yeah. And I think once people stop suffering for the basic needs, they even start to want to think about bigger
Exactly,
problems. Like
exactly.
if you no longer have to think about how to provide food for your
Only
your
if you
for your
have no
kids,
longer to think about this thing, you can think something else,
think something
right?
else. Yeah.
Yes.
And
And
then all of a
can you learn something else?
and then you'd want to like think about the environment or you'd want to think about
Exactly,
innovation and technology. But if you're burning wood inside of your
exactly.
house in most cases, it's
Yeah.
not even, it's an insane concern.
Yes, but
Um,
the first sustainability issue is the social sustainability
yeah,
and cultural sustainability, and we cannot speak about any other kind sustainability or put parameters or certification or whatever if we don't solve this problem first, because this problem sooner or later will arrive to us, will arrive to us sooner or later. Then we have to solve it.
Yeah. And I think it goes along the lines that you mentioned earlier as well, which is innovation won't just come around in that region. It has to be
Yeah,
forced, and that technology has to
yeah,
come
yeah,
through like concerted
yeah.
effort, just as you were doing in the
Yeah.
spaces of
And we have a
sustainability.
responsibility to think about this, because we have, the roof on our head, and then we can think. We have to think about it. It's a kind of ethical duty we have, somehow,
Yeah.
as architects. Even, if you think about architects in the 20s, the 30s, and the 40s of 30s, basically 2030s of the last century, all of them was involved in looking, in searching, in designing, in a way to let the people live better, right? Because there was a lot of workers living in very worse condition. Uh, in the 19th century and so on, and then in the early decades of the last century, all the great architects, Le Corbusier, Gropius, whatever, Mies van der Rohe, all of them was involved, of course, to build the villas for the richest, but also to find a way to propose some solution for let the people to live better and to have a roof, water, and whatever in their house.
Yeah. And I think l- luckily through that concerted effort, it's gotten a lot better than it was. I think, as you mentioned in your book, the stat is more people have been lifted out of poverty in the last
Yeah,
30
sure,
years
sure,
than ever before.
absolutely,
And
yes,
I don't think, I think there's another stat is that starvation doesn't exist unless for political or war reasons. So
exactly,
we
yeah,
have enough to feed everyone, which
absolutely. We have
40
it,
years
we have it,
ago
we have it, and
was
we are
insane.
succeeding in it. That's the point. We are
Yeah.
succeeding in it because the people we are. If you consider in the beginning of 19th century, uh, we human beings we were 1 billion, 1 billion, and then started uh, a group of people thinking that we were too much, too many. It was we should do something to reduce the number of population. And most of much more than half of these people were living in the total, were very poor. Nowadays, we are 8 billions. I don't know how many we are exactly this time. Say,
It's grown by a
yes,
couple in the last few
exactly.
seconds.
But the percentage of very poor people is very much reduced.
Yeah.
Uh, what we should say to that kind of people, and what we should say to the people that today they sustain the same purpose to reduce, to reduce, to reduce. Elon Musk said that the most important, the better thing we can do to improve our environment is to produce humans,
Mhm.
right? And this is true.
To
It's
produce
real.
geniuses and
Yes,
produce people that are motivated.
people, yes, people. Educate people. Educate what we said,
Yeah.
we were saying before, and then also United Nations studies shows clearly that as the cultural and economical status of a society increase, the birth rate decrease, right? And this means that we will arrive roughly around 10 billions at the end of this century, and will stay. Hopefully, we stay, in that number. The real tragic problem, the real tragic scenario, is that we're going to reduce, like is happening in Europe, for instance, or in Italy, for instance, or in that is the nightmare is not the overpopulation, is to the extinction. That is the nightmare we have to absolutely face. Thanks God, there are a lot of other, uh, you know, group of
Mm.
society that still have in their tradition the idea that a new birth is a wealth. Yeah. To to let to no, I would say produce humans, but it's not nice the word produce, but to if we are
The
more,
industrialization of
yes,
humans.
exactly. If we are more, we will be more. We will not be poor. We will be richer.
Mhm. Do you know if I wonder if that declining birth rate thing, is it more of an evolutionary inset that once your social and economic conditions improve, sort of something in your mind switches and you want to have less kids, or is it more of a cultural influence?
No,
Do you know if
there's
any
both. There are both
cultures?
both
Yeah.
elements because the first is something very simple, education. If a person start uh, you know follow an education education uh, you know path, of course you start making a family not at 15 years old but at 25, 30 years old, and you reduce the time for have babies and so on. This is very plain, very simple, right? Education brings with itself this element. Of course, if there's no education, 15 years old, a girl can produce babies somehow. Then this is the first thing, and then there is also the cultural factor, which is the echo of these people starting saying that we were too many when we were 1 billion, right? And this is a cultural, a very negative and dangerous thought, thinking, way of thinking.
I wish my memory was better now because the thought that you brought about the culture of people saying that humans are
Mm.
like a disease of the earth, you know, even way
Yeah.
back when, it reminds me of this argument that my economics teacher revealed to me in high school, and it was an argument. It was a debate between two prominent economists. One said that once we reach a certain level of humans, all disaster will wreak. It'll be anarchy, and
Mm.
there just or there just won't be enough
Mm.
food to sustain people, not enough resources. This was in the early 1900s or mid 1900s, I believe. And then the other economists banked on the fact that his argument was that technology will improve to such an
Yeah,
aspect
exactly.
that it wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah,
And at that time, the crowd was sort of
yeah,
split between the two of them. But lo and behold, the late 1900s approaches, that population numbers crossed, and it turns out that there is a smaller percentage of people who are starving across the world.
yeah, yeah,
And the wager that they had bet, I think it was $10,000 or something
yeah.
along those lines. And back in the day,
Mhm.
you know, it had to be paid.
Yeah,
So
sure.
yeah,
That's fine. I was also thinking that there's a lot of if you put all the inhabitants of the earth
yeah,
on a one after the other, yeah, 1 meter distance or two with each other, you cover the island of Manhattan,
mm,
right?
mm.
Just to have to think
Just that.
how empty is the earth, right? Uh, there was another of this kind of ideas. If you put uh, every family in a house, you put all the apartment, together, you have a cube of 10 kilometers per 10 kilometers per 10 kilometers. That's all. All the rest of the earth is empty,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
Just to have an idea. The idea that we are too many. If you consider how many animals we have on earth, there are hundreds of billions of animals. You know, and when you go in the countryside, you don't see crowd of animals. That is more a perception. It's a matter of perception that we are too many. We are not too many.
Yeah. And I think sometimes it also turns out to be a convenient answer for things. It's like
Exactly. That
instead,
that's the point. That's the point. That these arguments always often is used to do something else, to sell something, to implement some rules, to put some obstacles, to put some taxes or whatever. It's always like that. And sustainability, unfortunately, is often interpreted in this way. You know, using the argument of sustainability, they put a certification, compulsory certification means you have to pay someone to make this kind of certification and so on,
yeah.
right? Then often is used as a narrative in order to to get something from you, basically. That's the point. But I'm not saying that we should not preserve environment. We have to preserve environment, and it's very important not to waste energy, not to waste money. But this uh, is common sense.
How we go about it
Exactly.
is the debating,
Exactly.
right?
And the point is, read of some subjects that can overuse the resources. That's the point. That's the thing that you have to calm down. The greed of money, of revenues for certain companies, certain uh, organization that wants to overuse the resources. That's the point. That's the thing you have to fight against.
I think the thing that makes a very strong case for the argument of sustainability being a matter of technology is the fact that we just keep getting more and more efficient at using the
Yeah,
same amount of
yeah,
resources as well.
exactly.
Like you go from the computer that solved the Enigma, which I think was the size of a large room,
Yeah,
to the computer that did the calculations for the rocket to Mars, which is smaller,
exactly,
and then to a phone, which is much more powerful, a
exactly,
lot smaller, and then you get to the evolution of AI chips, which use roughly the
exactly,
same power as your
exactly.
phone or laptop would, but quintillions of
Yes,
times
exactly. But
more
the
powerful.
point is, if you project, the situation of the people. This is the mistake that these people did in the beginning of 19th centuries. They project, 1 billion people, maybe to 2 billion people, 2 billions people, with the same technology they know then, of course, was unsustainable. But the point is, if you increase education, you increase knowledge, you increase technology, you make evolve the different technology. Also, the housing technology, by the way, should evolve together with this. Then you cannot be, worried for the future if you don't know what you will invent in the meantime.
Yeah.
That's the basic. That means to trust, to trust the capability of human being to invent, to was another story about the patent office in United States in the middle of 19th century. They wanted to close, the patent office because they said there's nothing more to invent. That it's useless to have a. Can you imagine
Yeah.
what's happened from the middle of 19th century to nowadays? Then I cannot even imagine what will be the technology in 100 years and how. Look at the agriculture, with the fraction of people and a fraction of energy, a fraction of money we feed a
Yeah.
huge quantity of
Billions more.
people, much more with the same land,
Yeah.
with the same land. And what can happen with hydroponic agriculture and so on? We just when I heard this kind of arguments, I said, well, why you don't trust? Why you don't look at what we did? Just look at what we did, even in terms of architecture, and urbanism and so on. And I'm positive, I'm positive not because I'm optimistic, because I'm just, see the reality. That's
Just as yeah. Your examples of the physics, of the engineering side of things and the agriculture side of
mm,
things remind me of, I think, before the unpredictable nature of the atom was discovered as well, it was the consensus among some physicists was that physics is no longer a lucrative career because we've solved everything.
mm,
All we need to do is
mm,
find the right
mm,
equations, and then lo and behold, it's figured out that there's this unpredictable nature, a random nature
yeah,
in atoms, and then it's just like blown up all the
exactly.
way. And the same thing with agriculture as well. We went from almost everybody working in agriculture to now in developed countries, it's maybe 1 to 4% of the
Mm,
population
yeah,
are in agriculture, which is
yeah.
an astonishing number.
Just 200 years ago was maybe 60% of people was involved in agriculture. Yes, and now, you know, and so we consider the new horizon of physics with quantum physics and so on. That we don't know. We cannot even imagine what will happen. Then, let's go. Let's risk to
Yeah.
to innovate. Housing, for instance. Just starting from housing, for instance, right?
Yeah. So you have so many interests and so many areas of experimentation, not just in architecture and
Mm,
urbanism, but as we see in other forms of thought and process. And one thing that really stood out to me was your experience in cinematography.
yeah.
Can you tell me the story about how
Mm,
that came about and
yeah.
how that made you who you are today?
Yeah, it was in the end of last century. I was thinking that I wanted to become a director. That was my idea. And then I went to New York, to New York Film Academy. I followed a course there to learn about cinematography. and actually I wanted to become a director. Then I came back in Italy, and I was involved in some independent production as a second director and as also actor. And then I did one of my own my own film, my own feature, not long feature, but medium. And then I decided that in Italy we don't have a real cinema industry. We have some people who are struggling to get some money from the state in order to make their own movie. And then this means that they don't care if the people go to the cinema or not. There's no competition in this way. There's competition to get the money from the state. That's the competition that we have. In the United States, there is a real cinema industry where the people risk money, investors risk money, and then they need to have a good result in the cinemas. Otherwise, yes, that's why. Then I decided to go back to my first love, that was architecture.
Mm.
But actually, I became a different architect after this experience, because I was what I used to say is that. Architects are actually the screenplayers of space, because when you if you listen an architect designing something and a director planning a setup or planning a scene, they use the same words. They say, okay, the people enter from this part, then they will do this here, then we go this way, and then this director say this will say this will respond this, and so on. Architects use the same thing. The people enter from this part, the people will stop here, will leave, and so on. Then we actually have a um, relation with the space very similar, because we have to think a story in this space. What's happened in this space? With the people living in this space, they have their own story. The difference is that the director has one story to tell, and the architect has open stories to prevent somehow to imagine, then is like to design a setup for a scene where every story can happen then and there, and this is the difference. But that's why I'm saying, and also the way we visualize, the space is for me is the same. I visualize the architecture like framing some scenes, and I always say with my people here in studio, when they start producing renderings of the architecture, and what happens is that they produce renderings from a point of view that nobody will see from this point of view. Then say, you should consider where the people arrive, from where the people arrive, and that is the point, is the setup of the camera. You put the camera there, and then you look at the architecture, right? Not from the background, from the backyard, right? But from the most probable point of view of of the the most of the people that will see this building. And also, Le Corbusier was talking about the architectural promenade, the walking of the walking is a sequence of a movie, basically. And there are a lot of similarities. And for me, uh, I was starting using movies to show my architecture from very early. Nowadays, everyone are using videos but I was using videos in the early tens, at the end of 2008, when I started doing my practice in 2008. And I won also competition just sending videos of the architecture.
I would love to gain an understanding of how you absorb knowledge, how you find your interests,
Mm,
follow them, chase them, and is
mm.
it a process that you think about explicitly? Is it you can
No, no,
naturally?
no, no. It's a curiosity. Yeah, to be curious about everything that that opens. I'm very interested also in philosophy,
Yeah.
theology, and everything is opening a way to look at the things in a different way is interesting to me. It's interesting to me. This is because there's a reason for this. because when I was a student in architecture in Milan, I lived in a college, right? And I was the only architect there. There was all the other engineers, economists, philosophers, or lawyers, and so on. And then we had every week we had some conferences by scientists, mathematicians, physicists, psychologists, economists, engineers, and I was studying architecture. Then, for me, was I never heard a conference by an architect there, right? But this was very helped me a lot to open my mind and to use some patterns from other disciplines to view and to interpret my own discipline, my architecture, and also to connect the evolution of architecture, for instance, with the evolution of other disciplines. Because unfortunately, when we study in school, in university, we are very much focused and keen on our own subject, right? And then we think that all the world, the history of the world was turning around our own discipline, medicine or architecture or whatever, right? And instead, in this way, I had the possibility to understand the architecture is just a part of a wider evolution of thinking, and this was actually the origin of my curiosity for everything could be interesting, even if it's not my field, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's a good answer.
I think so. Yeah, yeah, and it ties back very much to what you
Yeah,
said about
yeah,
architects almost being directors of, I guess, the
yeah,
human
yeah,
experience. You would need that sort of understanding of
yeah.
how things are.
Also, you
That
understand
makes
that everything is connected.
yeah,
And when you look at the history of architecture and something change in architecture, and you at the same time study what's happening in the economy, for instance, the same time, or religion or society or whatever, and you understand why this change was happening then and in that way, right? And this is the most important learning of this is that the causes of changes are always something that are out of the discipline and connect with the evolution of human being and thinking of human being. That's why sociology is very important. Why philosophy is very important. That's why even theology is very important, right? And that's it.
and it's always been the case. I think it's just a part of human nature that sort of inspiration always comes from outside. I think
Yeah.
um, if you look at Da Vinci's notes, and there are scans of these online, he has on the same page as sketches for his flying machines, he has very detailed studies of anatomy of let's say the human calf muscle from
Mhm.
his 100th cadaver. I can only imagine.
Mhm.
And it's touted by art critics that that's one of the reasons why he was one of the foremost painters of that time. And
Mhm.
you can compare works of his to that of Raphael's. I can't claim to understand
Mhm.
the depth of art so much, but from what I've read, um, Raphael's understanding of art would typically lag behind Leonardo's, especially in the case of like how light falls on
Mhm.
bodies. Leonardo, I think, in one of his uh, sketches of his books, did the early form of what we now know as ray tracing, which is like light reflecting off of certain parts of your body or the environment and then bouncing onto others. And that understanding of human anatomy and I guess the way light works informed his art and countless other
Yeah.
informations I can only be sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
With this evolution of yourself throughout the many decades, what would you say have been the biggest turning points in hindsight that have led you to a more satisfactory, a more, I guess, aligned way of living?
Yes.
Yeah.
Two. One was the cinema experience for sure. There was architect even before, right? And there was architect after, but was a different architect actually. And the second has been this PhD, definitely. This PhD was just a restart of my career. I remember clearly when I was completely from 2008 to 2012, 2013, 2014, let's say. I was, was first, span of work, uh, let's say, propelled by the cinema experience, right? And then I was in China. I remember very clearly that I was completely empty, right? Uh,
After the cinema experience.
no, at the end of this
Okay.
period, and I was completely empty because I was just doing a master plan every week, and I remember I was think about myself like a pusher of architecture, or someone that is you know selling architecture like um, like cocaine, to excitate to be for some entrepreneurs to to get from the Chinese government the rights to build, right? And there should be something novel or something. It was like a cocaine, like cocaine, architectural cocaine. Then I feel completely empty after this. And I said, no, I cannot go ahead with this. And then I decided to close all my offices. I had three offices in China, one in Beijing, one in Guangzhou, and another in Shanghai, and to come back here. Then I lost all my clients there because for me, was an existential threat to go ahead in this way. And then I had to restart somehow. And then I thought, I'm, I, I'm focused. I've been focused uh, to design some buildings, but I need to be focused for who I'm designing this building. What this basic person, not the client, but the user of the architecture needs. Then I started this PhD.
Yeah. Where did that come about?
Mm.
The existential
Mm.
doubts to
Mm.
then this desire to design for you.
Because I didn't find, I didn't, I lost the purpose of my work. Why I'm doing this? Why I'm designing these master plans? Why? Because these master plans, they're not used to let the people live better, but they are not only used for these entrepreneurs to show to the Chinese government or the local government to get the rights, to win the rights to build, right? And after that, they can build whatever they want. Not always they build what I was designing. And what the purpose of my work? What is my contribution to improve the city, to improve, right? Then I was a very profound crisis, a very, very deep crisis. And the only way to survive, even physically, to this was to stop this and to come back uh, in Milan and to go back to university somehow because PhD is I became a student another time and be focused about the users, what the desires of the users. Okay, and then I reestablish the 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 deep reason for me to be an architect. Yes.
Can you describe the feeling of coming back and how it
Mm.
was to restart?
Fear. No clients. Then I had to start.
So
We
this is stage one.
stage
Not
one. Yeah,
nothing.
stage one.
Yeah.
Nothing. We I when I was working in China at the peak of the work, we were about 25 people. Some of them in China, some of them here in Milan, and the study was reduced in three people, me and other two, and I or three, yes, this kind of numbers, right? And I started the PhD, and I make some phone calls to old clients. One of these was the client that, after some years, arrived to build ChorusLife, which is a huge project we just finished last year, and everything restarted not from scratch because I had some contacts and but I was really I was very scared about the
Mm.
situation. Yes.
And what it occurs to me that such a big change that has come about because of a deeply personal
Yeah.
reason, and you take such big action,
Mm.
such big risk. All the pressure is now on executing this thing correctly, and figuring your way out somehow.
Yeah, sure.
And the PhD was a big part of it.
Yeah.
How did you go about? Did you already know what the right sort of topic area was for you to investigate, or did this have to be done after you sort of made the decision and decided, okay, I need to move?
You have to have a title for the PhD from the beginning, and the title was already about modular architecture, somehow hybrid modular architecture and uh, urban behaviors, right? Emerging urban behaviors. There was the range, the field was already there, decided, but the results, of course, was something that arrived in the 3 years afterwards, right? And but was very important for me. You said it's a risky decision, but it was much more risky to go ahead in that way. That's the point. I remember one day I was waking up in a hotel and I didn't realize where I was, right? But this was normal. That time I did realize who I was for some instance, and I don't wish to anyone to have this kind of feelings. You don't know who you are for some, like I was losing my memory for who I was, and this feeling less than 1 second, but was enough for me to understand that I had to stop. I had to stop because this was a crisis of identity because I didn't know why I was doing what I was doing, and it was actually this arrived to the level that I didn't know who I was anymore because I didn't know what I was doing, right? Why I was doing what I was doing. Then that was the emergency light. Then I had to stop this, that was much more risky to go ahead in that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and then it led to all of the investigations and success afterwards,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure it would be a beautiful feeling.
At least was much more interesting and adventurous. That's for sure.
Describe the process from once you realize that you're working towards something that is meaningful to you all the way to today. What did that feel like? Was it easy? Was it still incredibly difficult? What
I was
was
an incredibly it was difficult, a lot incredibly difficult. Even before was difficult. It was not easy. Then the point is why you are why you are facing why you have to put energy to face challenges. That's the point. Why? When you know why, then you have the energy to do it. When you don't know why anymore, then everything looks, a nightmare. That's the point. It was not more or less difficult than before, but at least I know I knew why I was struggling. I was fighting somehow.
Yeah. The reason why I asked you the question to do with how that topic for your PhD came to mind
Mm.
is because a lot of the times I also struggle very much to think about, like I know that I need to be headed in a certain direction, or I know that at least I need to be headed away from this
Mm.
other
Yeah,
direction.
yeah.
Um, uh, and and like it's usually is very difficult to sort of figure out, okay, is this the right thing? Is this the best thing that I can focus my efforts on?
Mhm.
Um, is,
I
am I
understand.
doing the thing that like the most important thing that I could be doing? And that like whenever I have
I can tell you
those,
something about that.
yes,
And, I think the point is to to decide this, is to uh, try to understand where you feel where I felt more comfortable with.
yeah,
That's the point. And with a direction, you don't have to see the last target. You have just to see light to see the next step. That's not my this is not my word is a word by a very wise person and scholar and so on. And it's not important to see the end, you know. It's important to see the next step and to be comfortable with it. Then let's see what's happened. When I started the PhD, I didn't know that I was maybe inventing the technomodule, for instance. This came afterward, and but the point is just see the next step that give you a direction with which you are comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. That reminds me of this guy called Naval Ravikant has this idea about specific knowledge, which is knowledge that sort of only you as a person attain because of your unique combination of experiences and interests and curiosity and knowledge. And that would guide you and your intuition towards something that is sort of feels right and unique towards you.
Yeah.
And I think that takes a lot of courage to delve into.
Yeah,
But yeah, that's probably the only way to go about it.
that is the only way to get some excitement,
Yeah,
doing what you are doing.
yeah, yeah. I think for people who have like very diverse interests, one risk is that you're always in like the area of the general, and
Mm,
you're always like switching from one thing to another to
mhm,
another to another, and that's another struggle that sometimes I come across as I'm interested in so many
mhm,
different things
mhm,
that it begins to become hard in some cases to focus in on one thing,
mm.
and maybe that's one of the ways through is like decide that direction that feels right in the
Yes,
moment,
yes.
develop that knowledge, that specific experience, and
And also find a field where you can put more things in. Cinema for me was this kind of things.
yeah,
I can put everything in a movie. I can talk about everything in a movie. But architecture somehow is the same thing because I was telling you that in a building all the stories can happen. Then you have to consider many different stories happening in your building. And also this idea that the apartment can change and so on is just because of this to put everything to put all much many things you are interested in what you are doing somehow.
I think what's beautiful about that is you're not only creating experiences and something that large groups of people can go through, both in storytelling as
Yeah.
well as in architecture, but you're actually pushing the envelope of what the future might be able to do, and those cases of development and issues. So I think that's really beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask you with the things to do with sort of the future and housing and urban issues, what are some of the things that you are the most excited about, and some of the things that maybe you think we should be cautious and careful about as we approach?
Okay, start from the second. I mean, the what is for me the danger, the biggest danger we risk to fall in is the over regulation, over regulation. The A lot of too many regulation about sustainability, about kind of you know parameters, numbers, that you have to fit in order to consider uh, your project validated somehow. This is a very big danger because there is no number that can be representative of the quality of architecture in the architecture way somehow. You can say that this architecture doesn't waste energy or maybe is let's say NZ, almost zero, consumption. You can say that there's no emissions. You can say that you can demonstrate with these numbers and parameters and certification and so on. But what about the beauty? Then the point is that I see that the energies of architects are concentrated to fit this regulation, and they have very few energies to invest in doing something beauty, quality, and innovate and try to feel the people living better in their everyday life, right? Okay, a person who is living in a more sustainable apartment in the world, I can say, wake up in the morning, okay, I live in the most sustainable way. But then the apartment is not well designed. Then, okay, I live in the most sustainable, but I wish to have a better apartment to live my everyday life better. And when I have a son, I would like my apartment can add another room without me to be obliged to look for another apartment and so on, right? That is the most, for me, is the biggest danger we have. There is a very plain sample I can tell you. You know that there are the Winter Olympics in Milan and Cortina this year, and they designed the most sustainable sport village, Olympic village in the world of history of Olympics, and that we also designed to become after the Olympics student housing. You should go. You should see these buildings. I don't know if you saw it.
No, not yet.
It looks like a jail, but a terrible jail, not a nice jail, a terrible jail. It's just cubes with square windows. You just need the fence, and then it's just on the windows. It's just a jail. That means this building is fitting all the regulation you have about sustainability, whatever. But this is a terrible.
Yeah.
I don't want to live there.
Yeah.
And by the way, it will be like thought by. It's been designed like a jail, like
Maximum
rooms. Yes,
surveillance.
exactly, and surveillance and so on. And then what if in the future uh, you will not you will need to put some families instead of students. What's happened? You have to demolish, and it's static. It's not dynamic. Then this is the perfect sample of what I'm saying. If we go in this direction, all the being will look like that,
Mhm.
and then this is a nightmare, a real nightmare. What is exciting? What's exciting me the most for the future of urbanism is the possibility for the city to become a space for the people to meet and to get to improve the quality of their relation, and to let the people talk, to let the people uh, create the space. There is a beautiful book by Edith Stein, which is a sociologist and, by the way, is also a saint. And she wrote a beautiful book about empathy, about friendship. And she said that empathy is the precondition for friendship, and empathy is basically make the space, because if you don't have the space, you cannot get in relation with others. And this thing to make space, where this word space means something for architects, right? Then if we make space and we design the empty space between the things, right? Then we create the space for relations for the people to improve the quality of their relations. The apartment is the word apartment, as I told you, is put apart. This is just the opposite to what the architecture should be. Then I really, what is interesting to me and what excited me about urbanism and architecture, which are the same things, by the way, architecture, urbanism are the same things, is the possibility to make space for the people to meet. That's the thing that excites me the most for the future. I don't know what does it mean, but
Mhm.
it's exciting as a as a scenario to follow, to pursue it somehow.
That's the beautiful thing about words is that they paint a beautiful picture, but a slightly different picture for everyone.
Mm.
And that allows people to come up with different conceptions, and
Exactly,
hopefully
exactly,
one of those,
exactly. One of
seals the
those,
deal
or
in the
two of
future.
those, or three of those, whatever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes.
What goes into creating a soulful city? And is it true that a soulless city makes soulless people?
Sorry.
Is it true that a soulless city, maybe it's the words that I'm using, but
Mm,
a city that lacks character and beauty
mm,
impacts
mm.
the way that people interact in
I think it's
situations?
the way around,
Okay,
because it's the beautiful people that create a beautiful city.
so yeah,
If you look in the history, oh, it's been like that.
yeah,
If you look at Florence in the Renaissance, and you look at the Middle Age of Florence, and you see there was a place where all the ideas they found the space to be developed in terms of financial, in terms of art, in terms of technology, in terms of let create the space, let the space for this thing to happen, right? And don't put regulation to constrain, to put obstacles of the that what actually architecture urban should do is to eliminate obstacles, even physical obstacles. If you look at the cities where we live, you know, are full of obstacles. First of all, the the space for relation is shrinked. We only have the sidewalk, to walk, and maybe we cannot even stop, in the sidewalk. We have some squares, we have some, but actually the main space for the cars to flow and to, if you just put the foot on their space, they scream on you that you have to stay on the sidewalk. This okay, uh, just to say that the beautiful city come because the beautiful people that create the city, right? That, that's
Yeah,
what I
yeah,
think.
yeah. And I think Italy's got a particularly beautiful culture of piazzas
Yeah,
and
exactly.
little
Yes,
areas that
yes,
people
yes.
interact with.
Yeah. That's why I think that Italy and Milan
Yeah,
can be the place, the right place to try to experiment some new way of it. Actually, what we did in Bergamo with ChorusLife is very interesting because we actually made a space in between the things, fully pedestrian. And I'm seeing is 1 year they opened 1 year ago. And I'm watching, I'm witnessing is that uh, this space start to for the people start to understand that they have a space for them, to do something where something can happen and so on. And it's very nice to see what will happen the next months, next year for this space.
yeah. If I can share a story of my own,
Mm,
the second or third day that I was in Milan for my exchange, I came here completely new to the Italian culture.
mm,
The only exposure I had of it was when I was 10 years old and my parents had taken me
mm,
to Rome. But as an adult, my first experience, and I was staying with an Italian family for the first several
mm,
months of my exchange here. One of their children who was leaving at this time was throwing a going away party. So within the first 2 days of knowing them, having met them just before I came here on video call, they invited me to this going away party, which
mm,
in true Milanese fashion happens for at least for
mm,
young people in the piazzas.
mm,
And she had friends who were musicians.
mm,
It's a professional jazz band,
mm,
and they brought their musical instruments, and we sat in a piazza,
mm,
ate, drank some beer, and
mm,
played around live music.
mm.
And I think that night I met more new people that came around
Yeah,
randomly than just her friends,
yeah,
and had
yeah,
some beautiful, beautiful conversations.
yeah.
Italian grammar was explained to me within those conversations, and people were so excited for me
Okay,
to,
Italian. Okay.
yeah, a little bit, at least the
Okay.
pronunciation of the hard C's when when there's like
Mhm,
the
mhm,
H
mm,
and whatnot. And I had this like complete bombardment of intense connection, and I felt
mhm,
very
mhm,
welcomed
mhm, mhm,
within the first 2 days, which is usually the time
mhm.
that people feel the most new to a place. Felt like home, and it felt
Yeah.
natural. Yeah, so that was really beautiful. And another thing that what you said reminds me of is this legend of the coffee house,
Mm.
which is I don't know how true it is, but from what I've heard, is coffee houses were one of the first few places
You
where
mean in
people
Italy?
could no, no,
No.
just the nature of the coffee house in
Oh,
general.
okay. Oh, okay.
Like coming out of the culture of bars, it was one of the first few places that people can gather and linger and talk and meet and discuss ideas. And I should know the stats around this, but that supposedly led to a lot of cultural innovation and
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
clashing.
Right. Yes. Yes. True. But I think the is always to make space to let the things happen, to let the people meet, to let the people talk also. To create the physical condition, the special condition in order this can happen. Because there is a very big influence, of the geometry of the space where you are in, to your attitude, to your psychology, to your mood, even to your mood, right? And even from many different point of view. For instance, I was just thinking a few weeks ago that the floor is the only part of the architecture which is in physical contact with you the most of the time. You cannot fly over the space, and then you have to. Then how important is the floor? For instance, the feeling, the tactical feeling that you perceive when you walk in a space, even in your house or in a public space, for instance. And the same thing, the shapes, the geometry of the shape, that of the space you are, surrounded by. And all these things are part of this idea to make space, to make the space best space for the people to feel well and most of all to to get in touch with each other to improve their relations.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you very much
You're
for
welcome.
this beautiful
You're
conversation.
welcome.
Yes,
Welcome.
I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Right.
Thank you.
Ciao.